he got asked about Tulsi Gabbard. And the reporter, the journalist said, there are foreign allies who are very nervous about sharing intelligence with her. And he said, oh, I don't know. I'm surprised to hear it. I heard that for the first time the other day. I mean, I think she's a great American. I think she's got tremendous common sense. This woman with tremendous common sense, Tulsi Gabbard, went to Syria, met with Assad, legitimized him as a member of Congress, then came back here and advocated for him. You're telling me this woman went over there, came back and advocated for him, and she's got common sense? Our foreign allies are right to be nervous about sharing intelligence with.
And we'll get to that. I want to start with something that I think is also important about facts, because recently on your show here...
I was just going to get to that.
Good. Helping you out.
You want me to ask you the question?
No, look, some of you have accused me of being a traitor to my country, a Russian asset, a Trojan horse, or a useful idiot, I think was the term that you used. Which basically means that I'm naive or lack intelligence to know what's going on.
They use that.
Well, she's a weird one because she has so many characteristics that you would think that everyone who's a progressive would want as president. She is a veteran who twice served overseas, twice deployed. She's been a veteran for a long time congresswoman. She's from Hawaii. She's Hawaiian. You would say she's a woman of color.
They say she's a woman of color.
She's a very articulate, rock solid woman, and they've tried to find a bunch of dirt on her, and they can't.
Yeah, did you watch the episode when Tulsi Gabbard got on to defend herself and Joy Behar starts panicking and going over her notes while Tulsi's refuting everything that she said?
Yeah, I mean, Joy Behar, like, again, these people have dementia. These are people who, like, should not be allowed out of the house. They have a national platform. I mean, it is crazy. They have no idea. These people have never read, like, a book.
Because she is a strong woman. She is a person who served overseas twice.
What happens when a decorated war veteran, a congresswoman, and a former presidential candidate sues one of the most powerful daytime talk shows in America for $50 million? You get a firestorm that not even The View could have seen coming. This isn't just another TV spat or celebrity feud. This is a story about power, reputation, and the dangerous line between free speech and reckless slander. Tulsi Gabbard, known for her calm demeanor and military discipline, isn't someone you can easily rattle. But when The View crossed a line on national television, calling her a traitor, a Russian asset, and even a useful idiot, she didn't just clap back with a viral tweet. She didn't storm out of the studio or beg for an apology. Instead, she walked straight into the courtroom and dropped a legal hammer so heavy it's still shaking the media industry. And here's the twist. This isn't just about Tulsi. This lawsuit has the potential to change how talk shows operate forever, because if she wins, it won't just be The View paying the price. It could set a precedent that holds every host, every network, and every panel accountable for the words they throw around so carelessly. So buckle up, because what started as a heated argument on live TV has turned into one of the most explosive legal battles the media world has ever faced.
I want to let your viewers know exactly who I am.
All right.
Set the record straight. I am a patriot. I love our country. I am a strong and intelligent woman of color, and I have dedicated almost my entire adult life to protecting the safety, security, and the freedom of all Americans in this country. It was the attacks on 9/11.
I guess we're getting a little bit far ahead of ourselves, but Franklin Graham finds you refreshing. He doesn't find me refreshing.
When Tulsi Gabbard walked onto the set of The View, it should have been a typical daytime segment, a politician promoting her campaign, sharing her views, and answering a few tough questions. But instead of a conversation, what she got was an ambush. Almost immediately, the host came at her with accusations that cut straight to the core of her character. Joy Behar and Sunny Hostin didn't just disagree with her politics. They questioned her loyalty to the United States. They called her a Russian asset. They labeled her a traitor. They even mocked her as a useful idiot, a term so insulting it implied she was too naive or too stupid to know she was being manipulated by foreign powers. Think about that for a second. A woman who had served 2 tours in the Middle East, a combat veteran, someone who had sat in classified intelligence briefings as a member of Congress. On live television, she was painted as if she were working for America's enemies. What made the moment even more more striking was Tulsi's response. She didn't yell, she didn't throw insults back. Instead, she stayed calm, almost unnervingly calm, as if every accusation was just another training drill. While the hosts shuffled through their notes, searching for backup, Tulsi dismantled their talking points one by one. The contrast was impossible to miss. On one side, a panel of TV personalities throwing out sound bites like confetti. On the other, a war veteran with the composure of a soldier under fire. The clip went viral, not because it was a fiery shouting match, but because viewers could see the imbalance. It wasn't a debate, it was a pile-on. And here's the part that would come back to haunt The View. Every single one of those accusations was broadcast to millions of viewers, not whispered in a corner, not typed on Twitter, said loud and clear on national television, archived forever. And that right there is what transformed this heated TV moment into the foundation of a $50 million lawsuit.
Richard Spencer, the white nationalist leader, says he could vote for you.
Joy, this is why,
I mean, you're on Tucker Carlson at least 10 times. Why don't you go on Chris Wallace's show?
This is why I'm here, because you and other people continue to spread these innuendos that have nothing to do with who I am.
Well, Hillary Clinton started it, and then you shot back at her, boy. You called her the queen of warmongers.
You doubled down, unfortunately, you doubled down on the baseless accusations that she made that strikes at the core of who I am. I'm a soldier. Because of the attacks on 9/11, I enlisted in the military to go after and defeat and destroy the evil that visited us on that day. I've served now for over 16 years, deployed twice to the Middle East during the height of the war, where every single day I saw firsthand the terribly high human cost. It's why I ran for Congress.
To understand why this lawsuit carries so much weight, you first need to know who Tulsi Gabbard really is. Because the accusations thrown at her weren't just casual insults. They struck at the heart of her identity and career. Tulsi isn't your average politician. She's a combat veteran who served 2 tours overseas in the Middle East. She didn't just talk about supporting the troops. She was one of them. On the battlefield, she witnessed the cost of war firsthand, and that experience shaped everything she later did in politics. She went on to serve as a U.S. Congresswoman from Hawaii for nearly a decade. During that time, she wasn't sitting quietly in the background. Tulsi held key positions on committees that dealt directly with national security, including the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Armed Services Committee, and the Homeland Security Committee. That means she wasn't just involved in politics. She was trusted with classified briefings, high-level intelligence, and decisions that shaped America's safety. And beyond her political and military resume, Tulsi was also a trailblazer. She became the first Hindu member of Congress. She was one of the youngest lawmakers when first elected, a woman of color representing Hawaii. She stood out in Washington not only for who she was, but for the values she carried with her. On paper, Tulsi had everything you'd expect mainstream media to celebrate. A progressive woman of color, a veteran, someone with experience and credibility. But there was one problem. Tulsi didn't follow the script. Unlike most politicians, she didn't shy away from criticizing her own party when she believed it was wrong. She questioned U.S. foreign policy when others stayed silent. She refused to confine herself to the usual sound bites or cozy cable news appearances, choosing instead to have long-form conversations on podcasts and independent platforms. That independence is what made her a threat. She didn't fit neatly into a box, and that scared the very institutions that rely on predictability and party loyalty. So when Tulsi sat on that stage, challenging The View's narrative, she wasn't just another guest, she was a disruptor. And disruptors, especially in politics, always draw fire.
She might not, because she's also a Russian asset.
So really? I mean, this is outrageous. This is outrageous and offensive on so many levels. I've served as a member of Congress now for almost 7 years, receiving high-level national security and intelligence briefings, serving on the Foreign Affairs Committee, the Armed Services Committee, the Homeland Security Committee, working to ensure the safety and security of the people of this country. This is why I'm running for president, to continue that commitment of service.
If there's one moment that put Tulsi Gabbard on the media's radar as a problem, it was her 2017 trip to Syria. At the time, she was a sitting congresswoman, but instead of sticking to carefully scripted press conferences in Washington, Tulsi flew to Damascus and met face-to-face with Syrian President Bashar al-Assad. For her, it was about diplomacy. She said she wanted to see the situation firsthand, talk to civilians caught in the middle of the war, and push for an end end to US-backed regime change policies. But the media didn't see it that way. They pounced. Overnight, Tulsi went from being an interesting outsider to a political lightning rod. Critics painted her as naive at best, disloyal at worst. Pundits accused her of legitimizing a dictator, even suggesting that the visit was proof she couldn't be trusted with national security. Cable news segments ran on loop, framing her as controversial and dangerous. And this is where The View found their opening. Her trip to Syria became the centerpiece of their attacks. To them, it wasn't just a questionable decision. It was evidence that Tulsi was compromised. They threw it at her like a weapon, spinning it into a narrative that she was somehow working against American interests. But here's the double standard that most people missed. Tulsi wasn't the only US politician to meet with controversial world leaders. Lawmakers, diplomats, and even former presidents had done the same without facing the same level of character assassination. The difference: Tulsi was an active, rising figure who refused to play by the political and media establishment's rules. That trip to Syria didn't destroy her career, but it gave her critics a permanent talking point, a card they could pull out whenever they wanted to discredit her. And when she walked into the View studio years later, that same card was played again, this time in front of millions of viewers. It wasn't just a jab, it was a calculated attack. And for Tulsi, it was the moment she decided enough was enough.
Saw you on The View.
Yeah. Yeah, so that's been overwhelming my past couple days. So I just went in there, did my thing. I had no idea what to expect. I didn't know who Sunny Hostin was. I actually still really don't know. So I wasn't expecting necessarily for her to kind of try to ambush me in that way and attack my character in that way.
Well, it is the show that people love to hate.
Yes, that's true. That's true.
They get so much hate watching viral clips of them saying ridiculous things. I mean,
yeah.
it is a rabies-infested hen house.
When the insults finally crossed the line from heated opinion to outright accusations of treason, Tulsi Gabbard made her move. But unlike most public figures who clap back with fiery tweets or late-night monologues, Tulsi chose a different battlefield: the courtroom. She filed a defamation lawsuit against The View for a staggering $50 million. And this wasn't some publicity stunt. It wasn't a tantrum. It was a cold, calculated strike, executed with the precision of a veteran who knows how to plan a mission. Behind the scenes, her legal team had been working methodically. They combed through transcripts, time-stamped every reckless claim, and built a case piece by piece. Every accusation, Russian asset, traitor, useful idiot, was documented and lined up like evidence in a military dossier. And here's why that matters. When you accuse an ordinary person of disloyalty, it's slander. But when you accuse a decorated US combat veteran, a congresswoman, and a former presidential candidate of being a traitor on national television, the damage isn't just personal. It's professional, political, and permanent. Tulsi's reputation wasn't built on celebrity gossip or influencer clout. It was built on trust. Trust from voters, trust from soldiers she served alongside, trust from colleagues in Congress. Once that trust is shaken by televised accusations of treason, it's not just her feelings on the line, it's her credibility, her career, her ability to serve. And that's exactly what Tulsi argued, that The View didn't just attack her opinions, they attacked her very identity as a soldier, a public servant, and a patriot. And now, for the first time, they weren't going to be able to hide behind the excuse of it's just daytime TV. Because in a courtroom, it's not about ratings, it's about facts. And Tulsi was ready to put every reckless soundbite under a legal microscope.
The View has to be, if you average out the View hosts, among the dumbest people on television. And so it's like they say the thing that people are thinking, but they say it very directly, so they expose whatever truth. But
I don't think some of them are dumb.
You don't think so?
No, I don't think Sunny Hostin's
You think it's
dumb.
deliberate?
I think she's ideologically driven, and they have blinders on for sure. I don't think Sunny's dumb, but Whoopi is certainly not the brightest person, and what she just said just doesn't make any sense. It's just like so silly to say.
If there was anyone who wasn't surprised by Tulsi Gabbard's lawsuit, it was Joe Rogan. From the sidelines, he had been watching the chaos unfold, and when the story broke, he didn't hold back. On his podcast, Rogan torched The View with the kind of raw, unfiltered commentary his audience loves. He described the show as a rabies-infested henhouse, mocking how the hosts hurled accusations without substance, cutting each each other off and fumbling over their own notes while Tulsi calmly dismantled them. To Rogan, it wasn't a debate, it was a circus. He went further, pointing out the absurdity of calling Tulsi, a war veteran, a congresswoman, and a member of national security committees, a national security risk. Meanwhile, the hosts were reading half-baked talking points like they were reciting from a high school book report. Rogan's verdict was clear. The View wasn't just reckless, it was dangerous. And then came his sharpest punchline. He warned that The View should be more worried about subpoenas than sponsors, because once Tulsi filed that lawsuit, the game changed. It wasn't about who could shout louder or score the snappiest comeback. It was about who had the evidence. And Rogan was convinced Tulsi did. For him, this case wasn't just about Tulsi defending her name. It was about accountability in a media landscape that had grown far too comfortable blurring the line between opinion and slander. He called it a wake-up call, and not only for The View, but for every talk show, every network, and every personality who thought reckless hot takes would never come back to haunt them. And that's why Rogan's reaction mattered. He wasn't just siding with Tulsi because he liked her politics. He was pointing to a bigger cultural shift. Independent voices like his have been exposing the cracks in legacy media for years, and this lawsuit, in his eyes, was proof that the old guard was finally being forced to face consequences. For millions of his listeners, Rogan's take didn't just validate Tulsi's fight, it turned her lawsuit into a symbol. A battle between unfiltered truth and the crumbling facade of mainstream media.
The culture shift between right and left authoritarianism, and now people don't recognize that if you just stop looking at it in terms of red and blue, look at the actions, whether it's war, suppression of free speech, pharmacological interventions that are mandatory, whatever it is, that used to all be associated with the authoritative right, the authoritarian right, and now those things are being embraced by the left. And I just think it's just an ideology thing, and I think we get confused and we think we're on the right side, and if it's our side that's saying this, for sure that's the right thing to do, and no one's critically thinking about it.
The moment Tulsi Gabbard's $50 million lawsuit hit the headlines, the atmosphere inside television studios shifted overnight. What had once been smug laughter and coffee table banter suddenly turned into closed-door meetings and nervous whispers. This wasn't just about The View anymore, it was about the entire talk show industry realizing they might be next. According to insiders, networks scrambled to launch quiet internal audits. Producers called in legal teams, combing through old transcripts, rewatching archived episodes, and asking one terrifying question: did we just defame someone on national television? The kind of hot takes that once seemed harmless now looked like legal landmines. Media executives weren't panicking about Tulsi alone. They were panicking about precedent. If she could sue for defamation and actually get traction, then suddenly every reckless accusation, every snide label, every cheap shot at a public figure might come with a price tag, and not just in public opinion, but in cold, hard cash. Reports even surfaced that some hosts were being quietly coached before going live. Instead of being encouraged to go viral with edgy sound bites, they were told to dial it back to avoid making claims they couldn't back up. Imagine that. Talk show hosts being warned to think before they speak. For an industry built on outrage, that's like telling a shark not to swim. Behind the scenes, you could feel the tension, because Tulsi's lawsuit didn't just challenge The View, it challenged the formula that daytime TV thrived on: loud voices, minimal fact-checking, and maximum outrage. If that formula was suddenly a legal liability, then the entire business model was at risk, and that's why the lawsuit rattled them so deeply. It wasn't just a decorated veteran standing up for herself. It was the first domino falling in a chain reaction that could change how talk shows operate forever. What was once just TV drama had now transformed into a potential courtroom nightmare, one that no network could afford to ignore.
Show has this very specific ideological bubble in which they operate in, and they always bring on a token conservative woman and they yell over her and silence her, and they did that with Meghan McCain, and they did that with what is that other blonde woman from Survivor? Do you remember her? Jamie? She was always yelling. I mean, it's a bizarre show.
Tulsi Gabbard's lawsuit isn't just a legal skirmish with The View. It's a cultural earthquake that exposes a much bigger battle playing out in America. the war between old school media institutions and the rise of independent voices. For decades, legacy networks like ABC, CNN, and NBC set the tone of public conversation. They decided who got airtime, which stories mattered, and how the narrative was framed. But that monopoly is crumbling. Platforms like YouTube, podcasts, and independent outlets are pulling in audiences who are tired of being told what to think. And Tulsi, she embodies that shift. She's a Democrat who refuses to stick to party scripts, a combat veteran who challenges endless wars, a woman of color who doesn't wrap her opinions in buzzwords. She goes on podcasts, not cable panels. She speaks for herself, not through handlers, and that's exactly why she terrifies the mainstream media. They can't control her, so they try to discredit her. And here's where it gets even deeper. Joe Rogan and others have pointed out a shocking reversal. The tactics once associated with the authoritarian right, censorship, silencing dissent, and demonizing outsiders, are now being deployed by segments of the left. When Tulsi didn't fall in line, she wasn't debated on policy. She was branded a traitor. Her loyalty was questioned. Her identity was attacked. That's not journalism. That's character assassination. And Tulsi's lawsuit forces the country to confront an uncomfortable question. Where's the line between free speech and reckless defamation? If she succeeds, the ripple effects could reshape the entire media landscape. Talk shows may have to think twice before throwing around labels like Russian asset or traitor. Hosts may have to back their words with evidence instead of applause lines. And for once, accountability won't come from ratings. It'll come from a courtroom. So this isn't just Tulsi versus The View. It's independent thought versus institutional control. It's the battle between a new era of unfiltered conversations and an old guard that thrives on outrage. And whichever side wins, the culture of media in America will never look the same again.
She's a weird one because she has so many characteristics that you would think that everyone who's a progressive would want as president. She is a veteran who twice served overseas, twice deployed. She's been a veteran for a long time congresswoman. She's from Hawaii. She's Hawaiian. You would say she's a woman of color.
They say she's a woman of color.
She's a very articulate, rock solid woman, and they've tried to find a bunch of dirt on her, and they can't.
At the end of the day, Tulsi Gabbard's lawsuit against The View is about more than one politician protecting her reputation. It's about a veteran, a congresswoman, and a presidential candidate drawing a line in the sand, saying that enough is enough. For years, powerful media platforms have thrown around reckless accusations with zero accountability, hiding behind the excuse of just giving opinions. But Tulsi's $50 million lawsuit shatters that illusion. She's not asking for an apology. She's not begging for airtime. She's demanding accountability in the one place where talk shows can't spin the narrative: a courtroom. And here's what makes this story so explosive. If Tulsi wins, it could open the floodgates. Suddenly, every hot take, every reckless soundbite, every cheap insult could carry a real cost. The era of daytime immunity may be over, but beyond the legal battle, there's something bigger at stake here. Tulsi's fight is a reminder that truth still matters, that patriotism isn't a punchline, and that even in a world dominated by gossip and outrage, calm resolve and evidence can still cut through the noise. So the question now isn't just whether Tulsi Gabbard will win her case. The real question is, are we watching the beginning of a new era in media accountability? Or will networks double down, hiding behind disclaimers and legal shields while continuing business as usual? Either way, one thing is clear. The last word on this battle won't come from a coffee table on daytime TV. It'll come from a judge's gavel, and when it does, the entire media industry will be watching. And if you want to stay ahead of stories the mainstream avoids, make sure to hit the like button and subscribe, because this battle is far from over.